All right, so my last video, right? My last video about live action remakes was the Lilo and Stitch review I did where I said I felt personally victimized by the Lilo and Stitch remake. And that was for a multitude of reasons, but really it was just every change that was made felt like it made the movie worse, felt like a complete misunderstanding of that original movie. And I've sat there since then and been like, well, what do I want from these live action remakes, right? Because I think it is to an extent unfair to complain about the fact that these things exist, what's the point, and then when they try and change things, complain about that too. But I think the big issue here is all the changes in these live action remakes usually just suck. And I think that's the big issue. I think people are open to different interpretations of the same story. And the reason I say all this is because going into the live action How to Train Your Dragon, this is easily the most optimistic I have been for a live action remake. I look at the material, right? Dragons, fantasy, kind of like Viking violence. And I'm like, if anything deserves a live action treatment, or if anything kind of makes sense if it in a live action version, How to Train Your Dragon kind of feels that way. You know, in Lilo and Stitch, you take the fun alien designs and make them live action and they suddenly look grotesque and gross, which I appreciated, but I don't think was intentional, right? I don't think they were trying to make some weird, gross body cosmic horror movie, right? They were trying to make a fun kids film and it doesn't land like that. But in How to Train Your Dragon, I'm like, you could actually make the dragons a bit more terrifying. You could make the Viking violence. They could have even gone like an M rating for this, made it a more mature take on the original How to Train Your Dragon. But at the same time, I am with people, right? The original animated How to Train Your Dragon is flawless. It's fantastic. And the big thing that you miss here in this live action remake, or whatever you want to call it, reimagining, is the visual flair, right? You look at this original poster for How to Train Your Dragon, look at the way the moon has this expressive lighting, you know, Astrid's reveal when she first comes into the story, there's this obnoxiously big explosion in the background. It's a heightened reality that really only animation can pull off. And I think in the live action, you miss a lot of that. But at the same time, I'm sort of like, if we're going for a more gritty take, this could be interesting. So how is it? How is this live action version? Guys, it's objectively a really good movie. It's a really good family film. Now, the issue is the original is a really good, if not a fantastic family film. And you do have to sit there and kind of be like, what's the point? Would I prefer, like, truthfully, here's what I would prefer. I'm going to say it right now. I would prefer if these studios put in, say, 10, 20, 30, I don't know how much it would cost, but like, let's say 30, 40 million into a big re-release of these classic animated CGI movies, but they also like ran it through the computer again. They updated the visuals with modern day visuals, right? Like look at modern Pixar movies, right? We look at Incredibles 2. It's not as good as Incredibles 1, but the animation is so much stronger, right? Like they've had 10, 20 years. I would love if they instead re-release these old movies with a new kind of redo, right? Like the way we do with video games, with remastered video games. Like, can you imagine getting a Toy Story trilogy that looks as good as number 4, but with the stories of those first 3? You know, don't change anything else, just run it through the computer again. We're not going to get that. I don't think. We're not going to get that. So this is the closest we can get to that. I think Disney and DreamWorks want to make more money. So let's talk about the good, all right? They've got the same director back. He clearly cares, all right? He's not just some hack from who's trying to make it in Hollywood and is just like destroying our childhood in front of our eyes. I'm not sitting there after the How to Train Your Dragon remake wanting to cry, all right? There is so much care and effort taken here. First off, the sets are fantastic. There is great like on set, on location, like cinematography, all right? Like they'll be hanging out in the mountains and it looks like actual mountains. The biggest compliment I can give this live action remake is it doesn't look like this awful, drab CGI goop, disgusting green. I hate how the Disney live action remakes look. They're meant to be these joyous, wondrous films and they look like shit. You know who got it right? Poor Things, all right? I'm going to have some wild references throughout the video, but Poor Things looks like a painting at times. It looks like a fairy tale. And then you watch these Disney live, and that's about like a fucking adult woman with a baby brain being like taken advantage of by multiple men. But that looks more gorgeous than these Disney live action remakes. And I think that's an important thing to point out. You watch these Disney live action remakes and they're like awful. How to Train Your Dragon looks brilliant. The performances are fantastic here. All right. Now, The one thing I'll say is, and this is kind of an issue you run into when it's live action and you can't control the design of your actors, right? So the guy playing Hiccup, I'm just going to say it. When they're trying to be like, Hiccup, you're such a klutz. Hiccup, you're so goofy. Hiccup, you're such a nerd. He's objectively like the hottest Giga Chad dude out of the bunch, all right? Like you've got a bunch of like kids and they're all bullying Hiccup, being like, oh, Hiccup, you're not a real Viking. And dude's got like the sharpest jawline ever. I know he's 17, so I'm not going to, fucking get too into it. But like, he's a good looking dude and he looks like he could hold his own. So you have to get past that. But he's trying his best to look kind of hollowed out. But the thing is, as the movie goes on and he gets more confidence, he's fantastic. I actually think this is as good as a live action Hiccup could be by the end of it. Minus that guy that works at Dreamworld or whatever. He's awesome and he does the voice too.
And you definitely should learn how to fly because wormcutters have 4 wings.
But that's fine. You know who's real good? And he was in the original animated version. He's playing the same character. He's playing Hiccup's dad. Gerard Butler. Gerard Butler I feel so bad for. I feel like he's someone who came on the scene and with 300 and a few other... After that, he was cast in a bunch of shitty rom-coms. And then he had like Olympus, Angel Has Fallen, all that franchise. But I feel like he's just been given garbage, Plane, Greenland, the Fallen franchise turned to shit. But like, he is a good actor. And here he gets to be Scottish as he gets to just give a real good performance, an emotional performance. He's really good here. Dare I say, I like this characterization a bit better in this version. Now, the thing I struggle with in this live action version is there's some stuff they've added here that I actually appreciate. First off, somehow it's 2 hours long and in a good way, complimentary, I don't know where the time went. It never dragged. And I'm struggling to figure out what the differences were. But this is very much a Control-C, Control-V movie, minus a few things that I appreciated. And I think what's going on here is DreamWorks has seen that everyone hates these Disney live-action remakes. They hate the changes they make. And they've just gone, we're going to play it completely safe. We're going to give you the exact same movie live action. And in my opinion, what we need is a live-action version to justify its existence. Something where you sit there and you go, oh, when it's live action, it gives it a different feel and it kind of, strengthens it in a different direction. So you can have both and it's kind of like two takes on the same great story. So for example, weird reference point here, but I really appreciate the original Speak No Evil and the remake of Speak No Evil. No spoilers here, but the original Speak No Evil is this bleak, cruel horror movie that almost works as a social commentary on people pleasing and not having boundaries. And then you watch the American remake and it's this more straightforward, fun thriller about trying to escape an evil family. Now, the thing with both of those movies is they both are running with the same story and have mostly the same story beats, but by the end of it, it feels like if two different authors were given the same prompt. That is what I would like these live-action remakes to be. Now, How to Train Your Dragon is definitely playing it safe. It is going for the same thing you knew, just live action, but there are a few things that move the needle here for me where I went, more of this, please. Like, if you do the whole franchise, more of this, because this makes more sense in live action. There's a brutality in some of the dragon violence here that wasn't in the original that I really liked. There's a scene where Astrid is in the jaws of a dragon. If you've seen the original, you know where this is kind of coming, right? The giant dragon towards the end, the giant dragon battle. But in this new one, she's like in the teeth and she's smashing the teeth to get out of there. That's a level of like brutality that just wasn't in the original How to Train Your Dragon. Similarly, one of the Viking kids are bashing a dragon's eye and there's like goo and gooey stuff coming out of it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So this is something that you do in the live action version that's a bit more adult than that original. Now, if I had it my way, you'd make it a full-on young adult movie, really escalate the violence and the tension. And then that way you really have a reason for this movie to exist. But I get they don't want to soak original classic in misery, and they also want kids to come see it. So I do understand that, but I think you could have lent into that intensity a bit more. On top of that, to give this movie credit, the training sequences have this added level of intensity. The biggest compliment I can give this movie, and maybe the reason I can see the vision here with live action remakes, is the dragons feel more intense. The dragons feel more dangerous. In that original, Even though all the characters are like, these dragons are terrifying and evil and they've killed our people, you can't really picture it. They inherently look quite cute throughout the movie. And even the Night Fury and its like menacing bellows with incredible sound design, I was always like, this is a lovely film. I never actually felt a sense of peril, except when the flying scene went wrong. But in this new one, the dragons do look menacing. They do look scary. They do look grotesque, and I think intentionally so. I also think some of the dramatic moments, dare I say, there's one that lands better here. And it's the fight between Hiccup and Hiccup's father, where they're going like, they killed hundreds of us. Well, we killed thousands of them. It's a good moment, and I think it even has greater intensity in this movie. So dare I say there are some things that are better in this movie. It's not a better movie overall. I'm going to say that from the jump. I miss the beautiful lighting. The music here is fantastic. It's the same music, but I remember in that original, I rewatched it recently, maybe about a year ago. And when I rewatched that, there's that moment where Hiccup's going to stab the dragon at the very start, stab Toothless. And then Toothless pounces on him and like shows his teeth. And there's this incredible like, wah, 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 right? With this incredible, what sounds like a pipe or a horn instrument. Brutally intense with its sound design. And I saw this new one in IMAX, so I was waiting for that moment to blow me away. And the sound mixing just wasn't it. I'm just going to be honest. They didn't turn it up to 11 the way that original did. So that was something that jumped out to me. I will say another moment that I think, dare I say, worked better. Now, the flying scenes are really good here, not as good. There's some moments where it does look a bit like Harry Potter Quidditch. You can tell they're on a soundstage. Very disappointing for a big budget movie. But there is a scene where Hiccup is learning to fly Toothless, and he falls off Toothless, right? You've seen it in the original, and Toothless has to catch him. And dare I say, in this live action remake, the sense of scale, the sense of how small he was compared to the ground where he was falling, all of that landed a bit more intensely in this live action. That was the moment where I was like, oh, we achieved something here in live action that maybe we didn't achieve in the CGI version. Because when he was falling, I was genuinely like this. I've seen this movie. I know he survived. I know, but I was watching it being like, oh my God. There is a sense of peril here that I really appreciate. I think the set design is fantastic. There is a lot of effort here on display. That's the big thing. This is not a lazy cash grab. Now, while we're talking about live action remakes, this is a very loose discussion. I do understand the reason people don't like it. I do understand that people are like, hey, like animation is a great medium in itself. It's not a juvenile storytelling device. You know, why are we acting like we need live action remakes? And I completely agree. My stance here is just like, kind of, if you can't beat them, join them. Like if these are going to be made no matter what, similar to the director here, right? He directed the original How to Train Your Dragon. He just went, well, if they're going to do it without me, I may as well do it. And that's my thing, right? Like I don't prefer them either. But if you're going to do them, this is a step in the right direction. If anything, it's so similar that I'm like, what's the point of existing? But I feel like some people are a bit hypocritical, right? Because there are people that complain whenever they do anything different at all. And now they complain that it's the same. I think this is a step in the right direction. They've respected all the original beats that are really, really important. There's a bit of added intensity and some changes here or there. And what I would like to see, what I would like if you're going to do a live action remake is find a property that can actually benefit from a more grounded story inherent to a live action format, right? But benefit from it. Don't do Lion King live action and then be like, oh, we can't have them like high five or something because animals don't do that in that animal kingdom. It's like animals don't talk either, you fucking idiot. But you get what I mean? So find a story that makes sense live action. And make it grittier in our world and add some changes where you're like, oh, okay, cool. Like that makes sense for this format. You know, similar to the Speak No Evil thing I was saying, right? That made sense for American audiences, what they did. And I think this movie is getting there, right? The teeth smashing, kind of the added intensity in the failing flight scene, the added intensity in the arguments between son and father, stuff like that is stuff that inherently feels a bit more weighty in live action. And they were moments where I was like, I get it. I kind of get it. You know, something like Monsters, Inc. Do not ever do that live action. That is so clearly intended for animation, you know? But hot take, I can kind of picture, dare I say, something like Despicable Me, at least the first one, where it was like villains beefing. I feel like you could make a fun, cartoonishly over the top movie about that. I'm not the biggest fan of Despicable Me or something, but I'm just spitballing here. Like there are some movies I can kind of picture. Someone said robots as a joke, and to an extent, I can kind of picture that. I feel like that would have been better than the Electric State, but I'd need to sit here longer and actually think of like good ideas. I don't think robots is a good idea, for example, but I can picture this eventually one day working, you know, and I think How to Train Your Dragon is a good step in that direction. It's objectively a good movie. All right. If we didn't know there was like an animated version, if this was our first introduction, it's objectively good. Whereas like the Snow White remake, if you watch that, not knowing it was an original classic, you would be like, what the fuck was that? That was boring and stupid and miserable. But How to Train Your Dragon is an objectively good movie. For some reason, the character beats don't land as well for me, or a few of them didn't land. There's that incredible moment in the original that's in here where Toothless saves a character and then kind of ducks his head like under his body between his legs and smiles upside down. And in that original, like, I was showing it to my fiance for the first time and she was almost tearing up and laughing. And I got chills, you know? And then I watched this new one and I'd seen the movie before when I rewatched it. But when I watched this new one, like some of these moments, they were just a bit too quick or they didn't land. Or maybe it's because it's real world, like live action. Maybe these moments are just harder to translate because you can't be as goofy with the facial expressions of the dragon because you're trying to have it work in a live action world. And these are moments where you see the limitations. There were moments like that where I'm like, oh, I remember feeling more in the animation because you could animate, you know, you could make these characters over animated. Now, this movie doesn't run into the issue with Lilo and Stitch. I remember Lilo and Stitch, the animation was willing to over animate the characters and have them slam doors and run after each other in a very visceral way. And it feels like maybe in the live action version, they didn't want to do that because it would look too close to actual scary family fighting between Lilo and Nani. I think this one, because it's got a PG rating, it skirts around that a bit. You know, I think the intensity is welcomed. You know, when people are fighting and arguing and it gets a bit ugly and uncomfortable, I think that's entirely intentional. And I think that's an interesting moment of translation, right? So there are moments where there's an added thing with a dad that doesn't like his son, which I thought was hilarious. At least I think it was added. But there's this whole one of the Viking kids. The dad doesn't want anything to do with him, and these moments are funny, but they feel a lot more dark humor. Like I heard people in the crowd being like, "Oh." And then similarly, there's a small moment where in the animation Hiccup like slams a bush and it whacks him back, and in the animation you find it funny, right? Because it's just funny. In this new one, when he slams the thing, because he's this imposing, jacked, sharp as jawline 17-year-old, when he's slapping the thing, you're like, oh, settle down, man, chill, get control of your emotions. And these changes or these differences, more like it, are interesting to me. And I think this movie is inoffensive, all right? If the first How to Train Your Dragon is 5, this is a 4. It's just some of the emotion beats don't translate as well into live action. But at the same time, there are some things that are better. I like the fight between the son and the father. I think Gerard Butler is on fire here and completely steals the movie. And I'm so glad he's getting great work to do. I know he's technically done this role before. He's fantastic here. I think Astrid, truthfully, is fine. I didn't feel their chemistry as much, dare I say, or their bond as much. I think I had a better idea of her as a character, what made her tick. We got more time with her and they showed off her competence a lot. I think even in the live action scene, seeing her like take down these dragons was really impressive. And a lot of really impressive camera work too, like really cool tracking shots. There are also some match cuts that I really appreciate. There's a moment where Hiccup goes to grab a rock and then it cuts to the dragon grabbing a rock to come rescue him. That was really exciting. And there was one moment I thought was objectively better in this new one visually, which is when Toothless kind of crashes the whole training sequence to save Hiccup. If you know, you know. And he shoots a fireball and it blows the smoke away. It looked visually stunning here. And again, the added intensity of these Vikings grabbing Hiccup is an adult change I appreciate. So I truthfully think if you're going to make these movies live action, lean into the added intensity. I think this movie did that. Again, do I think it needs to exist? No. Would I prefer a kind of updated CGI version of the original How to Train Your Dragon? Probably. Yeah. But there is so much good stuff on display here, and I would like to see a trilogy. I would like to see the other ones redone. And dare I say, I would like the sequels to change a bit. Genuinely. Like, I trust this director and I trust him to make changes that feel appropriate. And I think if they're good changes or even just different changes, that's what I would love. You know, now you have two versions of the story where you're like, oh, I love what they did in this one, but I also love what they did in this one. Wow. Because I want to leave these conversations where we're just like, why the fuck would they, why would they get Lilo to be adopted and given to the state? What the fuck? You know, like, I much prefer changes where you're like, interesting, inspired, nice. It's a solid movie. If you need something to take your kids to, go see it. Thanks so much for listening to me. Yeah, please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, I do memberships to this channel for Patreon and YouTube memberships. Both links are in the description below. You get access to a fortnightly podcast where I talk about every single thing I've watched, both shows, movies, even sometimes books, even sometimes theater shows, whatever media I'm engaging in. On top of that, I might start showing off my like new Blu-rays and stuff just because why not, you know? Anyways, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Like, comment, subscribe, and have a lovely day. Thank you.